Hey everyone, just so you guys know, we actually have a very special guest. He is loads of fun, even on wheels. And he is the expert. So just stay tuned. You'll find out. His name is Jim Nasr, for those of you who don't know.
This is the DarshanTalks podcast. Regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at DarshanTalks or the show's website at DarshanTalks.com.
Jim, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the stream. This is the first time we're doing a live stream, so we're blaming all glitches on technology. And since you are the technology guy, we're blaming all glitches on you. And
that goes through territory. I will take that.
My laptop needs some fixing. Can you come over and fix that? So I assume you do tech support as well.
You know, this is a COVID era. We do everything.
So
whatever keeps us busy. Yes.
So Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself. We'll kind of go from there.
Sure. I am Jim Nasr, as you mentioned. I run the Acor. We are software developers who mainly develop software for healthcare, but other industries as well. Very much software as a service. Our kind of DNA and background is very much kind of building large-scale systems and open systems that are interoperable and secure. And really, our objective, is that we think there's a real opportunity to build better technology in healthcare. Now, of course, albeit as you know, and I know well, the barrier, the bar is pretty low, right? So I'm not, suggesting we're doing magical things, but I am suggesting that there's opportunity for all of us, people like yourself and ourselves, to build better, more usable technology in healthcare, to lower the cost of ownership for some of these technologies, to open access more for patient data and patient engagement, if you like, and really build technologies that are more in line to what's being built in the rest of in other industries right now already and have been for quite some time. So ultimately, that's really what we're trying to do is build usable, secure technologies where you can, as much as we can help it, as much as is possible, to be trustworthy and have some way to prove that trust. So that's basically it.
So really, let's start with the first question. Is technology the solution? Jim, you have gone to your doctor, and I have gone to mine, and the last 50 years, they didn't use technology. Why do I need to worry about it now? I feel like everyone is trying to jump onto the technology bandwagon. And the question is technology the solution to everything? Or is it just our lack of imagination that is causing technology not to solve problems? And what problems have you seen technology sort of cause?
Yeah, so, answer is yes, all of the above. So look, is technology the solution? I think, if we're honest, pretty much every industry these days, technology is a huge component of it, and it would be foolish to dismiss it because, again, look, what are your options? Are you going to be Amazonified? Yeah, look at the retail industry, right? So we can kind of, put our blinkers on and say, like, we are public health, or we are medical research, or whatever it is that we're doing, and we're not technologists. But the reality is, technology is core to almost every industry, and certainly I believe that's the case in healthcare. Now, is it the be-all, end-all? No, of course not. There are things you got to know about every industry, and certainly healthcare is regulated. There are a number of kind of considerations, in terms of process, engaging with the different stakeholders and things like this that you really need to understand. So I think those things, it's not just a technology thing. You do have to optimize the process a little bit. You have to figure out where, there are things you can do that are really more common sense and more the right things to do, particularly now in this new consumer-oriented world that we're in, and to comply with, for instance, the Cures Act and things like this, right? So not just technology, but I think certainly technology is a part of it. Going back to the second part of your question, is there a failure in imagination? Without doubt. There's no doubt about that. Right? Again, you and I have seen this. And I've seen this, and I feel really strongly about this, Darshan, that there are, in healthcare, in pharma and biotech, that there are a lot of people making a lot of money there are a lot of executives, and we know a few of them, who are incredibly short-sighted, you know, whose motivation is their own bonuses. You know, they propagate and prolong this cycle of mediocrity, right, in my mind, where, you know, it takes very long time, a lot of money to do something that could be done much more efficiently, much more, you know, kind of much more effectively at a lower cost, you know, equally compliant, if not more compliant, way more transparent. The opacity that's, you know, in healthcare is just terrible. You know, I think the fact that none of us can tell what it is that we're paying for, you know, for anything that any medical treatment, as example, I mean, it's just shameful. So, you know, is there a failure in imagination? I think yes, but I think a lot of it is institutionalized. You know, it's people, you know, with cash cow businesses, you know, who frankly benefit by lack of interoperability, lack of, you know, kind of cooperation, and really they like to kind of milk that as long as possible. And I think, you know, collectively we can do and should do a lot better.
So if what you're saying is that there are cash cows, there are sacred cows that you don't want to destroy, and that's causing a stagnation, if you will, in technology. The question is, what are the opportunities that you have seen that are recently playing in that utilize technology in the best way possible?
Yeah, you know, so I think in healthcare, it's used as a crutch, but it can also be used as a key to open doors. You know, and
can you talk about the first one? Can you talk about the first one before getting to the second one?
Yeah. So where I'm going is that, you know, where I was going is that this idea of regulation is used as a crutch, right? You know, that it's a highly regulated industry, so therefore, you know, we are beholden to doing things, you know, in the same way we've been doing for 40, 50 years, you know, and now very well, right? You know, and again, I've spoken about this before. You know, in the rest of the world, we have this idea of what's called the, you know, Moore's law, right? You know, where technology is getting cheaper and faster every 18 months. Therefore, many industries really they're getting kind of economies of scale and return on investment over the course of time because of using Moore's law. So in R&D for medical research, it's the literal opposite. It's called Eron's law, right? Where over the last 50, 60 years, if you look, the line is the exact opposite mirror of Moore's, where it's got more expensive, more time consuming, and less efficient to get return on R&D in medical research. So my point with this is that this idea that it's a regulated industry, and therefore that's why we're, you know, inefficient. That's why we're interoperable and things like this. That's a crutch. However, I think it's an opportunity, because if you look now, here in the U.S. we have the Cures Act, right, which removes information blocking. It's becoming law beginning of next year. Very much kind of stipulates open interfaces, at least for basic health data from the vendors, you know, who have our health records, the electronic health record vendors and electronic medical record vendors. So that's a big thing. That's a positive thing. You look at the rest of the world, you have GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations. In California, you have the CPCT Act. So there's more regulations that are stipulating openness, transparency, interoperability. And to me, that's the flip side of the crutch, where now we can use the same idea of the regulations and say, hey, look, these regulations are driving us to be more open, be more collaborative, to make it easier for people who own the data, which is us as patients, to get to it, right? You know, when you look at, for instance, the FDA with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, right? That becomes law in a couple of years. This idea of essentially showing your work, showing a digital trace of everything that goes into a new compound, providing that digitally to the FDA so they can make decisions about the process, not 5 years after the fact, and when you have this giant thud factor of a book, but along the way. You know, make it cheaper, make it more efficient, make it more responsive. So I think those things are good things. So like from an innovative perspective, or somebody, you know, who, going back to your comment about having imagination, to me, that's an opportunity, right? You know, we could look at it as a crutch, but we could also say, you know what, it's an opportunity.
But I'm going to challenge you on that, Jim, because here's the big question. You see you see innovation, you see opportunity, and that's great. But on the flip side of that, you're worried about safety, you're worried about privacy and confidentiality. You obviously talked a little bit about the opportunities it gives, but one of the biggest issues you're facing now is this idea of a lot of these companies are being hit with ransomware, and the question is, how do you use technology in a way that doesn't compromise the patients who are participating? And you have had some experience dealing with large pools of data. You've done that when you worked at some government organizations. You've done that when you were talking about decentralized distributed ledger technologies. What is your response to people who say the barriers caused by sort of ransomware and safety issues are not enough? Like, that's not enough to stop the progress of technology.
Yeah, so look, there is no silver bullet, right?
Right.
And the reality is, if you're trying to find a binary situation, 0, 1, you're going to be looking. However, there's plenty of evidence, and not just, again, from healthcare, in fact, particularly from many other industries, such as financial services or the intelligence sector, where they are also dealing with very sensitive information, fast moving, very large, and they have to get insight into it. And they're doing this, and they're doing it security. So there's evidence that we can do it. We can, in healthcare, we can impute security, we can impute privacy preservation, we can use distributed ledger technologies, like you mentioned, in real time. We've actually done this at ACOR to show proof of data movement, or proof of what we call data authenticity, or proof of action. So all of those things, when combined as a holistic set of components that work together, improve your ability to do these things that we would like to do, which is have secure systems that retain the privacy of patient information, that are reliable, that are fast, that perform in a usable way. All these things combined allow us to do it. It's not 100%, but nothing really is 100%. I think what we cannot do, right, is sit on the sideline and say, well, we're just going to wait until, it's perfect, because it will never be perfect. We're going to go and do this. And as an example, all of the technologies we're using now for encryption, you could argue that in 5 years with quantum computing, all of it would be ineffective.
Right.
Scientifically speaking, that is a theory that holds water. Now, what it doesn't say, though, is in the meantime, there's going to be an army of entrepreneurs, people like us, who are going to be looking at this quantum computing kind of opportunity and saying, well, how do I now improve encryption at the same time? So it's not like, we can just pick and choose like one moment in time and favor it in our point of view. I think things are moving along the way. So, and I think what is important, though, is we, especially in healthcare, we've seen it with COVID. All of us, whether we're physicians and first line responders and people who are really putting their lives on the line, or people like us, building technology, obviously not anywhere near the same level of gravity of involvement, but we have a responsibility for human lives. When I was at the CDC, I was building software and the chief software architect, but really the mission was to save lives. So we can't forget that. We can't be on the sideline and a soapbox, and thinking ideologically when, we see right here, 260,000 people dead in the US due to COVID. So there's a real price to pay. And we have to kind of think, where is our bias for action? Where's our bias for treatment and helping people? Because when you think about it in that context, it clarifies a lot of things. And then, like I mentioned, there are many industries that have proven, right, that even, for instance, using public clouds, that you can be incredibly secure. You can be incredibly reliable. You can have monitoring and measures and countermeasures that protect you and protect data leakage and protect you against ransomware. Not completely, but to a high degree.
So you talk about COVID, and there have been some opportunities that COVID has allowed, and people talk about how COVID has accelerated the access and use of technology. But is it a limited window? Are you seeing technology and the opportunities and the lessons that COVID is giving being applied in other healthcare spaces, in larger, shall we say, long-term problems?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think again, I know you're quite a learned person in this area, probably a lot more than I am. So look, there were people at the CDC talking about this global pandemic 10 years ago. I mean, there was a book published by one of the former directors or deputy directors of CDC, I think in 2012. It's like literally predicting that the next big global pandemic would be some kind of variation of influenza, and it would be kind of debilitating for the world, right? So it was not a surprise. In fact, after 2014 with Ebola, there were a lot of steps taken at that time, very much to proactively deal with this. Now, the fact that we didn't, that's a whole different, kettle of fish, and we're not going to get into the ins and outs of that. There's a lot of reasons,
right?
But it was not a surprise. So I don't think it's going to be a surprise for this to happen again and again, right? I think we're seeing this. We're also seeing very unpredictable side effects of global warming, right? And I think, who knows what's going to happen and the kind of novel diseases and situations we're coming across. So all to say, I don't think COVID, yes, certainly we all hope COVID goes away with the new vaccination in particular that we can contain it. But I don't think it's some kind of a one-off that we're never going to come across in our generation or in our lifetime. There will be other variations. The other side of this is that if you look at COVID and just COVID-19 in the current time frame, we're probably easily 18 months from now of having to contain it, having to deal with things like health passports and showing our status and showing where any one individual is within the community and to get back to work, get back to school, get back to events. So even if you look at it within the next 18 months, for sure, I think that there's going to be an ongoing set of activities around COVID and using technology to be able to make this a realistic scenario going back.
This is the DarshanTalks podcast. Regulatory Guy, Irregular Podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at DarshanTalks or the show's website at DarshanTalks.com.